Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Space Engineers on the Xbox. Excuse me. On the Series X. I was off for most of the weekend. I was actually attending a local convention. Now I've got some of my breakfast stuck in my throat, it seems. Well, today I wanted to take a peek at something utility for space engineers. You've seen me do small grid ship builds that are just literally something along the lines of this thing here that tootles around the landscape, and you could use it just to fly around, prospect for some ore. You've got my little one here that I showed off as well. But what about something that's a bit more utility? Something portable that takes these on the road? Well, the principles of building a small grid ship still apply. And for a start, what we can do here is we can just pop open the build menu with the left stick and just take a nose into the rotor section, and we'll drop down a rotor. We'll just take that rotor part off. I am playing in creative, so I could have just deleted that rotor part, but in survival you'll need to take it off with a grinder. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to just flick through to give myself a little better access to the rotor or to the grid. I'm just going to throw a control panel on there. I'm going to go near it, press X, and then I'm just going to type rotor or rot, and then I want that one, which is in the white, and I want to lock it and add a small head to it. Now, that can be used as a way to build off from. And also, if you're playing in survival, you're building off from it, and whatever's attached to it, battery-wise, is recharging. So we want to have a look at something with a cockpit like this. And if you look at the size of it, you'll need 3 grid blocks to accommodate it. So I'm going to switch the color here to a darker hue, red, and now I know that I am going to be building my ship on that. It's not going to be very pretty. It just needs the functional parts to make it into a ship. Really just a base and some form of cockpit. I'm thinking one of my favourite cockpits, which is this thing. Works quite well. Very industrial. And if you're building this on a planet, you haven't got to worry, unless there's no atmosphere, about oxygen. And since we're focused specifically on a planet, we're going to be doing just that. So what we want here is, first of all, We want some batteries. And these are good. They fit around here. Fit them where you want. 3 in. Back. And you'll see they start to charge instantly in creative anyway. So we've got 3 batteries. We're going to need, obviously, some way of controlling the turn on this thing. So we slap a gyroscope on it. And now we can control the turn of the ship. Roll, pitch, yaw. And if it's going to be a utility vehicle like a welder, it's going to need a place to store parts. Now that small cargo container isn't going to cut it. Medium cargo container or a large? Well, you could have a large. Remember, you're going to be dealing with small grid in terms of the best way to do this one. Small grid in terms of the parts and the welders themselves. So this box facing this direction isn't too bad. And what we've got here are 2 ports, one here and one there. So maybe we want to look at a different way of doing it. Just looking at it now. Let's have another look at the cargo box. Ports at the top, bottom. Bring it back here. Back on. Always tricky to get these things just right. If that fails, just point the cargo container at the ship again. There we go. So if you look, you can see a port there and a port there. So now we can rotate it and we'll have ports on either side. That's what we wanted. That's better. And we've got a large port on the back, which we're going to slap on our connector. Like so. It's starting to take shape. So you're wanting a welder. You have to think where your welder's going to be. Well, again, opening up the build menu, flicking across to wheels and weapons, you can see there is a grinder and there is your welder, and there's your sort of grid size you're playing with. Unless you put a mod on, there's no small tools. So we want to drop a welder there. Now you can build with symmetry mode on if you want. Or, like me, you can turn it off and just do it yourself. I'm thinking, do I want a second welder or not? Yeah, why not? And all the welder needs to function is a connection to a cargo container that's got parts in it. In this case, if you look, we want the small layer. And I believe, if I remember rightly, have a conveyor converter now, which is we need here. This was a lot harder before, and so now a lot easier thanks to the conveyor converter. Now we've got the conveyor converter, we can go back to the small conveyors. Let's see, are they on the list? No, right, got to go flick through to them then. And we can run a conveyor system. Now, if you use the small conveyor blocks like this, you can cause a bit of lag on servers. The tubes aren't too bad. But we do have the reinforced tubes now. We can play around with those. And they will provide a much better link if you build. Like so. And you can see that the light is green. So that's connected all the way there. Same deal. Go through. A small conveyor tube. Put it back until it's underneath just one block shy. Then do it that way or the other way. If you notice, you can see through it, so you know it's facing the right way. And the lights are green. And you'll see I built it the opposite way around on that, but that doesn't matter, and you can build it symmetrical if you want, or you can go for a little bit of a different design. It's entirely up to you. That's your choice. This is just a little demo ship. And you'll see that it's now connected up to the cargo box. Those welders in survival will pull parts from this box all the way through to the system and into the welders. But it's still not going to work because, of course, any ship needs thrust. My suggestion on this is probably to bang a couple of thrusters for lift. You could go for 3 either side. That will give you quite a bit of lift. Since you're working in gravity, you don't really need thrusters on the top. So if we pop open our build menu again, go to Ship Essentials, and look at the large atmospheric thrusters, and then just go to the atmospheric thruster itself. And you can decide where you want to put them. They would fit quite well here. I could fill this entire line here since we're playing in creative, but remember, the more thrusters you have, etc., more power and so on. And you want thrusters in every direction to ensure that you get a decent light. Play around with this. And my rule of thumb is always, if I put 4 thrusters at the back, I would like to at least drop 4 thrusters out front. So we've got backwards, forwards, lift, we're missing, thrust to the left and the right. And since we've got this bar to work with, we can have a look where we could pop them. We could potentially drop them on a part of the ship here. Can't put them there at the moment because there's no room to drop them down. We could put one there. And come on. There it is. One there. One there. And one here. What you want to do now is you want to go into your cockpit. Now, what I like to do, obviously, you'll see I'm connected to the grid at the moment, so it's picking up anything on the grid with a Gatling gun. Block tools, it's picking up several of these. So what we want to do first is we want to look at the thrusters that are on our own grid. Also, we're not doing any targeting with this, so straight away into the control panel, our industrial cockpit, and we want it to turn off. Target locking, make it the main cockpit. And then, fingers crossed that we've got enough lift and so on, we should be able to sever this from the grid, and that is now free floating in the air, and we can work with it as its own separate grid. So going back now into the control panel, you can see everything is fine. So, block tools, welder, pop that in there, and then you can turn the welder on and off, and you'll see, if you look down, you see the lights flashing as I hit the welder, right trigger, flashing away. Next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we can turn the thrusters on and off. How do we do that? Well, we need to put them onto the grid. So, control panel, and we know they're atmospheric thrusters, so Atmo thrusters. Press A on the first one, hold down the right bumper, hold down A on the second, and just pull the D-pad down and keep on tapping it till it reaches the bottom. Flick the left stick to the right, under block group, and type in the name. Want to call it? Hit save. And then add them to the grid. Hold down on the D-pad. Go to groups with the right bumper. And you'll be on your thrusters. And then you can put them to on and off. We can maneuver the ship around. Don't turn them off while you're in the air. That's your little welding ship. all connected up, all piped up to the central box with the thrusters, batteries, a connector on the back so you can park it onto another connector, use it to charge the batteries. Also use this connector to put components on the ship, or you can use the top of the box to put the components from your inventory or even base onto the ship that you need for your welding project. If you're using a projector, which of course you will be when you're welding, make sure that the projector is connected to the grid via blocks like I've got on the 3D printer, if you remember that tutorial. And then you should be able to use your welder. One thing we can do here is if we're going to operate at night, it's nice to have one or two spotlights just in case, and we can throw them on. If we go to the control panel, we can see them straight there. Press A again with RB held down, block group, and name your group, save it. Left on the D-pad, groups, there's the welding spotlights, them on and off like so. That's the small grid welder design, and we should be able to maneuver it. It'll be quite nippy. Down and around. Ready to weld this. There you go. There's not much room really to get this welding ship round, but anything you miss you can always weld by hand. The purposes of the welding ship is more to have a flight capable welder that you could use to weld up something that was built on a bigger rig, like a large grid ship on your HQ. And remember, you can always swap out the atmospheric thrusters for ion in space. If you're going to do something like this in atmosphere, I always recommend the atmospheric thrusters. Hydrogen thrusters will chew through your fuel, and if you're only using it for like a welder, then really you don't need the lift provided by hydrogen to keep the ship in the air with the parts on board. And that's really all there is to it. One more thing you could do is you can pop open your control panel, flick across to info, change the name of small grid 3868 to something unique like welder 1. Press OK, and that way then when you're blueprinting the grid, when you put it up on mod.io, it has its own unique name, and it just pop up with small grid blah blah blah, and there you go. That's it. That is how to build a welder for a small grid that can weld up various projects on your base, and how to pipe it up properly, and how to get it working. You can take that into survival and it will work just as well as it has done in creative. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing. Thank you for the support. Hopefully you're enjoying the channel and the content. There's a lot more to come. I'm going to be leaving an interesting link in the description of this video, something that Marek posted recently to do with a new Space Engineers update called Grid AI. It sounds very exciting, and it sounds as though finally we're going to get new AI blocks to be able to create drones and other things as quickly and efficiently as we can the custom turret controller, turret guns. All great stuff anyway. Thank you once again, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.